Okay, Council, our regularly scheduled meeting for April 21st is now in session. Would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Clark?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mulvey?
Here.
Councilmember Brinkman?
Here.
Councilmember Cole?
Here.
Councilmember Ostermiller?
Here.
Councilmember Taylor?
Present.
And Councilmember Trujillo?
Here.
Would you all rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? You have the agenda in front of you. Are there any changes?
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Yes, staff would like to request an executive session to discuss negotiation strategy for cost sharing for the paving project on Rio Grande Avenue.
Okay, we'll add that as a 13F.
All right, thank you.
I'd like to add an item 9D, which is a discussion of the appraisal for the Mineral Avenue building. Are there any objections to the changes to the agenda? All right, then the agenda is approved with those changes. Minutes for the special meeting of March 10th. And you all should have gotten an updated copy from Wendy via email yesterday. Any changes to the March 10th? Okay, great. Then those are approved as submitted. April 7th.
I've already submitted my unsubstantive comments to the clerk, and I don't have others. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Then those April 7th, I'm sorry, Tom?
Yeah, I've got page 18 doesn't have the long talk that Jim Taylor gave that night, and I'd like to have them put it into the minutes. Was it page 18 or page 9? Page 18.
This is on a TRIP report.
702 on the National League of Cities Conference.
Jim, do you have your notes?
I can provide them to Wendy. I don't have them with me.
Okay. Why don't you give those to Wendy? We normally have summaries, but if council people want to put in specific items, then generally we go for that. But I think it'd be easier for her to recreate that from your notes than it would be to go back through the tapes, if that's all right. You want to bring these back, or you want to just approve them with the changes that Wendy puts in?
I'd like to bring them back.
Okay. Let's bring these back next regular meeting. That brings us to introduction of new employees.
I don't have any tonight. Thank you.
Okay. And we have some guest citizens, a Littleton Rotary Group Study Exchange. And I've asked Jose Trujillo to read that communication so I can greet you, if you'll come up with your names called, and because he can pronounce the names.
This evening, the Littleton City Council is pleased to recognize 4 visitors involved in Rotary Group Study Exchange. As you may know, Rotary is an international service organization of business and professional leaders who provide humanitarian service, promote high ethical standards, and build goodwill and peace around the world. The Group Study Exchange program offers a month-long vocational and cultural experience in which paired Rotary districts exchange 4-person teams of young professionals. This group has been and will continue visiting Rotary clubs throughout the state. They will be in Littleton from April 19th to the 23rd. While in the host country, the team members experience the culture and spend time with people who share their professional interest. The opportunity to observe and learn from professionals in our country is a cornerstone of GSE. 2 of the visitors spent time with some city staff yesterday. The following participants are, and if you would step up to the podium, Maria Florencia Suarez Tomaselli. She is the Communications Director for Cámara Americana de Comercio y Industria de Panama. American Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Panama. She is responsible for public relations, including working with the media, supervising the development, publications, membership activities, and merchandising. Diana Carolina Falcon Almanza. She is an account director for Contacto Publicidad y Mercadeo, a public relations and merchandising company. She manages accounts such as Banavenda, Lambercentro, Onda Benz, Botesh, Speedo, Crocs, and Hospital San Fernando. Nixa Judith Guerra Cabrera. She is the owner of the Servicios Legales Bajo Boqueta Legal, a general legal practice. Migration and commercial law are her interests. She hopes her visit to the United States will teach her how law is practiced here and to make her a better attorney to her clients, many of whom are from the United States. Ana Lafoli. She is a Rotarian from Panama and is the team leader. She is the owner of Wild Orchid Coffee Farm. The Littleton City Council extends a warm welcome to these outstanding women and the Littleton Rotary Club members for facilitating their visit. All are to be congratulated on their efforts to build goodwill and lasting friendships with others throughout the world. Bienvenidos. Chair. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, just briefly, on behalf of our team, thank you so much. This is an honor, and our visit to Littleton has been exceptional, and we thank very much the Littleton Rotary Club for providing just excellent vocational experiences for the team. So thank you also.
Certainly.
Right.
Did we have an award for now?
Is Laura Kroger, are you here? Laura, why don't you come down?
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to give this award to the City of Littleton. I'm with the American Public Works Association, and I hope that most of you are familiar with our organization. We're about 25,000 members across North America, and our goal is to represent at the state and federal level a common voice for local communities, as well as providing opportunities for networking and education for our members. As we all know, we're all facing the same challenges of budget constraints and failing infrastructure, and now's the time that we really need to be providing the best education and training for our public works professionals so we can really step up to the challenge. And I'm really pleased to give this award tonight to the City of Littleton because they did exactly that. Fred Bromberger and Jim Brednan really stepped up to the plate when they did the Little Dry Creek siphon rehabilitation project. Normally, when a sanitary sewer system's failing, our first reaction is to replace it. Well, they looked beyond that and really found a creative solution to how to realign that system while also keeping the system in place so people could still flush the toilets and take a shower. And I really commend...
Very important things to our citizens.
And I really commend their effort and creativity. So tonight I'm going to present the American Public Works Project Award for Wastewater Treatment Collection to a medium-sized community to the City of Littleton and Jim Redman and Fred Bromberger.
You could say something if you want, but you don't have to. Thanks, Jim and Fred. Appreciate it.
Hi.
Bye-bye. That brings us to unscheduled public appearances, which are is a time for any citizen to come down and express an opinion or ask questions regarding city services, council policies, or any other matter of community concern. We ask you that you limit yourself to 4 minutes and state your name and address. Sure.
My name is John Vangenak. I live at 7872 South Logan Street in Littleton. Been a resident for 22 years. First of all, I want to thank Council Member Cole for telling me how to speak before the council today, how to get here and what to do. So I appreciate her getting back to me and being so helpful. I stand before the City Council today to ask the body to consider adopting a resolution concerning the 2009 federal economic renewal grants to the City of Littleton. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a resolution, and I will hand this out to the City Council and also some information on this resolution. Of course, I expect no action today. I'd like to give you some time to study.
Oh,
This Buy America resolution was drafted by the Alliance for American Manufacturing and the United Steelworkers. And again, before I read this short resolution, I'd like to say whether you're for or against the economic stimulus package, unless this money is used, to help American workers, whether they're in manufacturing or whether in the service industry, then it's all we've really done is just, again, dig a deeper hole, get ourselves deeper in debt to foreign countries. So we hope that the Littleton City Council will consider this resolution, and I'll try to read it now without screwing it up. Okay. It's called the 2009 Resolution on Spending of Federal Economic Renewal Grants to the City of Littleton, Colorado. Whereas the economic downturn is having a critical impact on everyday Americans who are struggling to maintain and find jobs in an increasingly difficult environment. And whereas those same Americans are taxpayers that provide the revenue needed to operate essential government services. And whereas Congress has approved and President Obama has signed into law a taxpayer-sponsored economic recovery package that will provide billions of dollars to help economically devastated cities and states immediately provide jobs to millions of out-of-work Americans through considerable infrastructure rebuilding, green energy projects, and other projects that will require manufactured components. And whereas our taxpayer dollars should be spent to maximize the creation of American jobs, restoring the economic vitality of our communities. And whereas any domestically produced products that are purchased with economic recovery plan monies will immediately help struggling American families and help stabilize our greater economy. And whereas any economic recovery plan spending should to every extent possible include a commitment from the City of Littleton, Colorado to buy materials, goods, and services for projects from companies that are produced within the United States, thus employing the very workers that pay the taxes for the economic recovery plan spending in the first place. Therefore, be it resolved that we, the undersigned, will work to maximize the creation of American jobs and restoring economic growth and opportunity by spending economic recovery plan funds on products and services that both create jobs and help keep Americans employed. Be it further resolved that we commit to purchasing only products and services that are made or performed in the United States of America whenever and wherever possible with any economic recovery monies provided to the City of Littleton, Colorado by American taxpayers. And be it further resolved that as legislators of the City of Littleton, Colorado, we commit to publish any request to waive these procurement priorities so as to give American workers and producers the opportunity to identify and provide American products and services that will maximize the success of our nation's economic recovery. So I hope that the City Council has an opportunity to study this resolution and the facts that I handed you out in the other handout, and I'll be here, in a couple of weeks to talk to you about it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good evening. My name is James Kerber, and I live at 2350 West Main Street, Littleton. I'd like to bring to you tonight a proposition or proposal of building a parking garage in downtown Littleton. I work for a building management company on Main Street, and I've observed that there's many businesses going out of business or leaving Main Street because of lack of parking. And the parking is limited on Main Street. And I don't know if anyone's talked about this before, but I thought I'd bring it up again. It would be pretty important to be able to visit Littleton like on the weekends, like when they have their farmers market and things on the street on the weekends in the summer. It'd be a nice place to be able to park free of charge, preferably, and be able to walk down Main Street and enjoy the retail places. I don't have anything written up or anything. I just wanted to voice my opinion. And if you ask for anything further, I could probably research more. But that's about all I have.
Okay, thank you, James. We actually study the parking problem or parking situation downtown periodically. I don't remember when the last time is that we've done a study. And we lease and provide to the public for free parking places. You're probably aware of at the Rinky parking lot.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I was thinking someday maybe the city could buy that piece of property, or if they don't already own it, and put a parking garage in it.
Well, that's been suggested by many people other than the Rinkies. Currently, the Planning Commission is going through a comprehensive planning process for the downtown. Hopefully, part of the output of that process will be determination on what the parking needs are. Not just currently, but future parking space requirements that are driven by existing regulations that we have that are triggered when people go to redevelop their property. I'm thinking that's late summer. The schedule for that, for Planning Commission to finish up or get at least well started on that.
If I need to make a petition or something, would that be helpful, or?
They are having a couple public forums in May, and you may want to attend some of those and voice your opinion on the issue.
Because I'm really serious about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not a retail owner yet.
Yeah. Well, we're very concerned to make sure that there's adequate parking downtown also.
Yeah, because I can see it on the weekend, when they have different activities going on. How is that affected? How I know they can park other places, but for the retail on Main Street, that's what I'm concerned with.
You know what?
Not getting adequate parking.
Why don't you give your name to the city manager there, and perhaps
I was
he can
just
get
going
you
to
a
say,
copy of
and
the parking
the Littleton
report.
report, we have published those forums, and I think for James, attending one of those planning commission forums would be an excellent opportunity to get your ideas in the, on the front burner. Yeah, so I got your address at 2350, so maybe you can just give me a phone number or something, and I'll make sure you get notified of those forums.
Plus, you may be interested in the parking studies that we've done, and that's where we've sent people
Well, I know
out
it
and
sounds
counted.
expensive.
Oh,
That
the
might
parking
be-
garage?
That might
It
be one
is.
of the deterrents. But, I think Littleton should grow.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Sure.
My name is Dwayne Duffy. I live at 4550 Tule Lake Drive here in Littleton. I've been a resident since 1978. My wife and I currently are Colorado Master Gardeners. We volunteer over at the CSU Extension Service here. 2 days ago, I bought 2 beehives and installed them at my property, and I thought it was okay because many of the surrounding cities allow that. But I found out it wasn't permitted, and so I'd like to propose that the ordinance be changed here in Littleton to allow Littleton residents to maintain beehives. Currently, the cities of Denver, which is far denser than our city, Golden, Englewood, Aurora, many of the cities in Douglas County as well allow that. Hudson Gardens and the Littleton Historic Museum also have beekeeping. At one time, little history, Littleton was one of the top honey producers in the state as well as the Rocky Mountain region back in, I guess it was in the 1800s. And there are many beekeepers currently in Littleton, although I'm sure they're in the closet beekeepers. Some of the benefits are really critical. I think we're all aware of the CCD, the colony collapse disorder that has affected the bee population. And our vegetables and fruits really depend on that. I don't think people realize how critical it is, and we need to do our part to do that. And bees right now, I think, are considered and lumped into the ordinance of livestock, hardly livestock. And they unfortunately fall under that and are subject to that restriction that won't allow it because it's agricultural zoning. Some of the other benefits, certainly gardeners are going to be very happy. The honeybee should not also be confused with the yellow jacket. That's certainly an aggressive insect. But honeybees really are. I've raised honeybees prior to this, and they're really very friendly, and they will only sting you if they're threatened. They're really quite docile. And they actually raise and breed bees for their aggressiveness, or in this case, non-aggressiveness. So they're not, and certainly not like Africanized bees, which currently are not allowed in the United States anywhere to be raised. A little bit more, honey and pollen have very outstanding health benefits. We all know that. It never goes bad. Honey never goes rancid because of the low water content that the bees maintain. And it's the only insect that produces food for man. So it's good for Littleton. We should do our part and our role to promoting a green environment and take a lead in that and allow beekeeping. And that's pretty much it. I have the ordinance for Aurora as an example that I'd like to hand out. An example, it's one page.
Thank you.
Well, I guess I would ask, what is the process now that where it goes from here?
Jim?
Council, I'd like to, because I think this is a time-sensitive situation, we'll have fruit trees blooming within the next month. And it is critical to, as Mr. Duffy said, to get them pollinated in order to produce their fruit. I'd like to ask that the council get a draft ordinance on first reading at our next meeting, and we can go from there. We can, once we get the draft ordinance, we can see what kind of changes and limitations we may want to put on it. For example, what size lot you got to have in order to allow one, these types of things. But
yes, sir. I would suggest if you're going to suggest that, because I think the devil is going to be in the details on this. In some of the other cities that have passed ordinances, we have noticed that they're, depending on where you allow, and Mr. Duffy's right, we currently allow them in agricultural zone districts. But if you're going to allow them in all residential zone districts, I can almost guarantee you will have citizens who will have concerns, particularly citizens who have small children. Mr. Duffy may be right that these bees are all friendly, but that may be a public education campaign. In some of the other cities, we've noticed there is quite a bit of discussion about setbacks, where the hives have to be located and so forth. So just to give you a heads up that if you're pressing speed in this, but Suzanne can certainly do that, but I think you'll also want to make sure that all of your citizens who may need to be educated or may have concerns about this will want to have an opportunity to be apprised of a proposed change in this ordinance.
And it has to come to a public hearing anyway. And yes, I think we'll have plenty of time to get that word out.
Yes, sir.
I have a question in the meantime. So you've got 2 hives. Are they in another city now?
No, they're here.
And so is that going to be a time factor with him for his hives? Or might we want to give him some leeway until we get this.
Dr. Cole, I don't know. I want to speak with code enforcement people and see what kind of notification they've given.
Okay.
Mr. Duffy, we need to be fair to everybody
I appreciate that, yeah.
I have, just as a word here, I have talked to Rebecca in code enforcement.
Yes, sir.
And we have not reached an understanding, but I told her this isn't something that, like a box you buy at Target and you take back. These bees came from California. They were sent separately with a queen. They were put in a separate hive. They are now in a new location, and you can't just up and take them on a new location like that. So,
You know, and what we may want to do, Dr. Cole, because this actually came to us as from a concern from another citizen, and I'll ask Rebecca to set out an email sort of describing Mr. Duffy's circumstances and what we're doing there.
Do we have a study session scheduled on the 28th?
You do not.
No,
We've got
it's
district
citizen
meeting.
forum.
Citizen forum?
It's my citizen forum. And I can talk about beehives in my citizen forum.
Yes, you can if you want. Well, Council, what's your druthers? Do you want to do this as a study session first? Or do you want to bring it as a first reading?
Doesn't it have to go through the Planning Commission? Jane, isn't it this part of the zoning ordinance?
If it's part of the zoning, then yes, we would. I think Aurora's was in the animal section, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, this has to
I think
do
they took
with...
it out of zoning.
Yes.
Well,
So if you want...
So we don't know for sure whether it's in...
Ours is in zoning, I believe. Yeah, Aurora's is an animal.
Okay.
But yeah, this would have to go through zoning. I think we would take it out of zoning and put it in animal, as Aurora did when they did theirs, but it would still have to come out of the zoning code.
John? Jim?
I just think we need to move forward on doing this. Springtime is coming and flowers are going to be blooming and we need bees.
I think that, from what I've read, the decline in bees is a serious problem across the country. I think in certain areas like Shady Croft and probably your area, the lots are large enough that it can be accommodated without issues. If you put them in some areas with R3, that might be a big issue. So what if we were to do this on the 12th as a study session? Can you bring us concerns and study session issues?
Yeah, I mean, we can put together, I drafted this Aurora ordinance, and I was around when all the controversy happened there, and I think it's the same for every city. It's just a issue of residential versus the beekeeping, and you'll have some people come out and say they're concerned about their children who are highly allergic, and you'll have issues regarding, do you want to set back, do you want to have a certain lot size, those kinds of things. I think those are just things you'll have to weigh. I think we know what the concerns are, just from past experiences. We could bring this to Planning Commission as early as Monday. My concern is just that I think you want to give those citizens an opportunity to be heard also with regard to their concerns if they abut a home where there's beekeeping and they happen to have children. One concern we heard in Aurora were people who said, we can never let our children in the yard now, and those kinds of things. And I think you have to give them an opportunity to come out and talk about their issues. Whether you want to do that in front of Planning Commission or here, I guess. I'm not sure doing it on Monday at Planning Commission would necessarily get the word out to those people.
I'm not sure either, and then I'm not sure what we'd give to Planning Commission unless you just put something to suggest to them.
I mean, I would probably, having gone through it, suggest what I drafted in Aurora, which had to do with lot size, setback. We allowed it in residential, but I would probably go down the same path just because we went through 4 or 5 iterations before we came up with this one, and this one seemed to satisfy people the most. It had to do with fencing and other. There were a lot of things put into this ordinance that we negotiated with the beekeepers. I don't know what your organization is.
There's many, but
yeah.
the Northern Beekeepers.
And we kind of tried to negotiate through some of these issues of what was reasonable to require of them versus putting to rest some of the concerns that the residents would have. So, I mean, if you were tasking me to do it, I would probably do it much the same, just having been through it.
I guess I just would like to get this moved along as expeditiously as we could.
I mean, I can have something drafted as early as tomorrow or the next day. It's more just, when do you want to have it heard?
Well, you say Planning Commission is on the 27th?
It should be on Monday. I didn't meet this last Monday, so.
So second and fourth Mondays?
Right, yeah.
Okay. So they're the 27th. The next meeting they would have would be the 11th of May. Of May.
Correct.
Which means, in theory, it could come to us on first reading on the 12th.
No. It had to come to our first reading before we get to the second.
Oh, I'm sorry, because we have the regular meeting on the 5th, so it would be the 19th.
Right.
When we'd have it as first reading, which means second reading would be the 2nd of June. Well,
Can we put it on the agenda on the 5th? Does it have to be a study session? Can we put it under general business, or?
well, you could,
If the agenda isn't that heavy, we could go into a study session after the meeting.
well, the issue is, do you want to have a study session before you send it to the Planning Commission? Or do you want to just have our resident expert create this one for us that's similar to Aurora, send it to the Planning Commission, and then get the Planning Commission's recommendation as part of first and second reading or first reading? Because if we send it to Planning Commission, they meet, as Suzanne said, next Monday. When do you post the agenda for the Planning Commission?
Usually I receive my copy Thursday or Friday, so I would say we post it. Is that right, Wendy?
Friday before the meeting.
Friday before.
So do you think you could get something done by Thursday or Friday?
Sure.
So that it appears on the agenda?
It'll look a lot like this. Yeah.
You want to do that, Jim?
I think that might be the fastest way we could go.
Put it on Planning Commission on the 27th, and then in theory, we could do first reading on the 5th and second reading on the 19th. See what happens. Council okay with that?
Okay.
Any objections? All right, let's try that and see what happens.
Thank you very much.
Certainly. Anyone else?
I'll be real quick. I'm Carol Breezak. I live in the 4th District. Several months ago, we had an urban drainage project behind our property. And the first we found out about was when we had some urban drainage men walking through our yard, which after having Mom's home broken into kind of alarmed us. But I have to tell you, from that point on, everything was wonderful. They used my mother's backyard to stage, not her backyard, but the property right behind her backyard. They used her property to stage everything, and there was a mountain of dirt and boulders. I mean, it was quite a mess. But they have cleaned it up. Everything is back the way it should be and even better. And the creek, if you haven't walked it, it's beautiful what they've done. So I just want you to know that whoever was responsible for all of that, if you see him, talk to him, Charlie, let him know that, oh, it's these guys?
Yeah.
Oh. Then I guess the award you got was for that? Okay, well, then maybe another one will be coming. You really did a nice job, and we were very, very leery with all the things that we've had happen along Lee's Gulch over the years. I have to say you guys were the best. Thanks.
Thank you. And I go by that frequently, and they did do a very good job on that, even when it was raining lots and water going down. Anyone else? Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are, in theory, non-controversial. They can be adopted by simple motions. First item is a City of Littleton's ethics protocol and standard of conduct, which would be approved simply by a motion, and this is it's standards of basically how to behave as council members and board members, and what's expected in the relationship between council and staff, the council and the boards and the staff, and everything. It just helps spell out some things, most of which were understood or implied.
But we just got some tonight that I haven't read, some changes, right?
And Councilmember Cole did suggest some changes, which I can tell council didn't change the content of anything. And then Councilmember Mulvey also requested, which I did in more of an appendix form, some additions to a travel policy. And I actually submitted a couple examples to council and thought at some point we could have a discussion and I could get some direction on.
Let's pull this, and then we'll just discuss this in a second, if that's all right. I assume that's the direction we're going. That leaves us 7B, which is an authorization to expend $100,000 from the Conservation Trust Fund for the Berry Avenue Community Pea Patch or Vegetable Garden. This is a pea patch. It will be located directly north of, and I always get the name of that park mixed up.
Powers.
Pardon? Powers. Park. At corner Powers and Huron. Be on the north side of that. This is to provide more pea patch or community gardens because we have a waiting list for the existing community gardens. We already have a line item in the budget where we have allocated a certain amount of money from the Conservation Trust Fund. This would take and make it explicit what it is that we're spending the money on. And I'm sorry, that's a simple motion
Simple
also?
motion, yes, sir.
Okay. So
I move to approve consent agenda item B.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to approve consent item B. Is there any discussion?
I would like to clarify that if we don't use all the money on the project, it reverts to the fund it's coming out of. Is that
Yes,
right?
ma'am. It would stay in the Conservation
there.
Trust Fund. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. Now this takes us back to item 7A, which is the ethics protocol and standard of conduct. What you had submitted to you in the packet, which was on the consent agenda item, was a specific version of this. There have been some concerns apparently expressed by Dr. Cole and Councilman Mulvey about certain items. Council, do you want to send this back for modification? Do you want to try and modify it now?
I'd like to have time to read it at home rather than take time here. These two items are, or just one of them?
They're not really offered for adoption tonight. Those two travel policies, I would just like to get some direction on because there's a couple different ways we can do it.
Okay.
One policy concentrates more on the travel issue and it has remedies for a violation. The other policy is a little bit more simplistic, and what it does is essentially divide out the money among council members in a budgetary sense so that all travel and any other council-related activities are lumped into one sum, and then any travel above and beyond that, which wasn't pre-approved by council, would be for that specific council member to pay for, or any council-related expenses above and beyond.
But those two documents are not part of...
Well, they're very different, and I wasn't entirely sure what kind of direction council wanted to go on a travel policy or an expense policy, and so I offered those two to try to get a dialogue started in hopes that you could give me some direction on how you would like that drafted.
Council, this is beginning to sound like a study session item. Shall we postpone this to, what's our schedule like on the 12th?
Here, we've got two items right now, and so I think we could accommodate this if you want it.
Okay. Shall we postpone this to the 12th? Because I suspect the travel policy is going to be a interesting discussion.
Particularly with Councilman Mulvey, yes, it will be.
Well, and I would say that both of those policies do make room for the fact that if a council member is appointed to a board with consent of the council, that portion is exempted. And that was typical of every policy that I read as I researched this issue. And then there are some provisions about sharing the language. There are provisions about what kind of travel is appropriate, what rates are appropriate, how long it's appropriate to stay. All those kinds of things are addressed in one way or another in those policies.
Well, we're coming up, getting ready to do the next year's budget. We've had discussions off and on about travel and expense accounts and all sorts of things like that. So I would entertain a motion to postpone this to May 12th, if someone were to make that.
Second.
Okay. I moved, and Tom Mulvey seconded, to postpone this to May 12th. Any discussion on the date of the postponement?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. That takes us to item 8A, which is an ordinance on second reading regarding amendments to the wastewater utility ordinance. If you would read that by title, please.
This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, repealing and reenacting Title VII, Chapter 5 of the Littleton City Code pertaining to wastewater treatment.
And council, we have with us tonight Pam Arnold, who is the pre-treatment administrator at the Littleton Inglewood plant. She will present this to you, and also in attendance tonight is Dennis Stowe, who is the plant manager. Charlie, I see you up. Did you want to make any comments? Charlie's just going to pass something out. So, welcome, Pam.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Prepped on how to place this stuff, so that's what I'm going to do. My name is Pam Arnold. I am the pretreatment administrator for the wastewater treatment plant in Littleton and Inglewood. We have done an extensive revision to Title VII, Chapter 5, Section 25, which is the Industrial Pretreatment Program section of the Wastewater Utility Ordinance. We present to you all sections 1 through 25 in this change because there were many sections, many pretreatment requirements strewn throughout the sections. So we had to strike those pretreatment sections and put them all in a brand new Section 25. The purpose of the ordinance change is that it was required as a result of a June 2007 EPA audit, which noted that there were legal authority deficiencies in the authority, which is the ordinance, of course, and that we had outdated local limits. So some of the major changes, the substantive changes that you'll find in that Section 25 are a new administrative enforcement section. Prior, there was just a criminal enforcement section, and in both industry and my staff prefer an administrative path, so we've provided that. We did evaluate the local limits and changed some of them. About half of them decreased, while some remained the same and a couple actually increased. We consolidated the pre-treatment program requirements in Section 25, as I mentioned earlier. We also added a sector control program section, part of which was strewn throughout the entire 25 sections of the utilities ordinance. So we've enhanced that and organized it and put it in its own section. We finally added definition section to the beginning of Section 25, which are definitions germane just to pretreatment, so that we can lift out that entire section and hand it to our industrial and commercial users for their convenience. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions you may have. I'm sure you all read that word for word.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes. I do have a couple of other handouts I could talk about as well. This is a list of the significant industrial users in the city of Littleton. This is specific to the local limits changes. We evaluated about 2 years' worth of analytical data for each of our significant industrial users to identify who might be affected by lowering some of the limits. And as you can see, we had 2 people who would be or might be affected. One was Cortec for silver, and the other one was Unicircuit for lead. The Unicircuit was truly going to be an issue, so we started working with those industries who might be affected early on and found that, in fact, Cortec had a problem with one of their polymers. So they've already corrected that problem. They no longer have a lead issue problem. And also with respect to local limits, we did an evaluation, and local limits, of course, are pollutant by pollutant specific. This is an evaluation of where Littleton Inglewood would stand with the new local limits for hexavalent chromium, for example. So as you can see, we're about 2/3 of the way down the list. So there are about 2/3 of the cities in the Front Range who have more strict limits, and about 1/3 who have less strict limits than us.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Under industrial pre-treatment program, this is just on the amendment here by the council. It says the city must have authority and procedures for these activities in ordinance for industrial users in the service district with home rule city designation. For selected administration and enforcement activities, the city can delegate authority to the Littleton Inglewood and Littleton Supervisory Committee. Currently, the authority and process for delegating these responsibility is not clear.
The language in the existing ordinance was deemed to be unclear by the EPA auditors who performed the audit. And that auditor is here tonight, so he might be able to go into it further if you'd like.
Well, I was just wondering who makes a decision and how does this decision come about as to when something is not clear?
The ordinance actually is changed to clarify that, to clearly indicate that the city has the authority and the city may delegate it as it chooses, down through the ranks, through the supervisory committee, through the council.
I'd like to observe that I did read this whole thing and found it very tedious and made several suggestions. Then we got a slightly revised version, but we didn't get more revised because these wonderful folks are constrained by the legalese and gobbledygook a bit of federal authorities. So, I was trying to make it a little bit smoother without changing substance. So they did a great job. But there are two places where we probably want to make a correction. One is on the first page, and Charlie caught this too. On page 1 in the now therefore, section 1, we're missing a verb. Hereby is repealed. And then on page 34, I did make a correction, but probably the typist has all the letters, but not quite in the right order.
What's the first correction?
On page 1, the hereby, in section 1, it says section 1, chapter 5, hereby is repealed. There's no is in there. And on page 34, in item 56, the last line, it should be users, U-S-E-R apostrophe S. So every now and again, English teachers, these things just jump out at them, and I had noticed that in the original, and you corrected it, or somebody did, but the apostrophe and R got switched around, so thank you.
Thank you for those words. I appreciate all the work that you've done on the ordinance, too.
Thank you.
It was very helpful.
Well, it's very insightful and helpful to me. Not that I could in any way step in and do what it says, but I think I have a better handle on it.
There is a lot of language in the ordinance that is lifted directly out of the EPA regulations, of course.
Yeah, and you guys couldn't change that, and that was worse than doing income tax, so.
All right, further questions?
I guess I can't resist this. I know this is for the best, but this is a classic example of one of the unfunded mandates that we get from the federal government that says, thou shalt do, and it costs us money to thou shalt do. It is a mandate that comes down, but we get no money to try to correct the situation. And to me, it's an unfunded mandate. But the benefit for the public good probably outweighs our expense we have to do to provide this. But it does irritate me that we get all these demands from the federal government that you shall do these without any funding to do it.
Any further questions? All right, thank you very much,
You're
Pam.
very welcome.
This is a public hearing. If anyone wants to come down and testify for or against this, now would be the time to do that. Okay. Dr. Cole, I would suggest that you make the motion and include your 2 corrections in the motion, please.
I move the public hearing be closed and the ordinance authorizing an amendment to the wastewater utility ordinance be approved with 2 minor corrections. Page 1, Section 1 should read, just a second, Littleton City Code, Title 7, Chapter 5, hereby is repealed and enacted as followed. Page 34, Section 56, or Item 56, last sentence, design of a user's, U-S-E-R apostrophe S, correcting the spelling of user's treatment system.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the ordinance, basically rewriting the wastewater utility with the 2 corrections suggested by Dr. Cole. Discussion. The reality that we have is our regulations are all going to get tighter and tighter as time goes on. That's probably a good thing because we are all very concerned about the water quality, both that we drink and that is put in our recreational streams. And since this is put in our recreational stream, it's important to us. It's unfortunate about the cost, but I don't know how you can get this stuff for free. So, council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The ordinance is approved.
Thank you, Dennis, Pam, and the unnamed auditor. Okay, that brings us to item 9A, general business, which is a discussion regarding the request for the National League of Cities Board of Directors meeting in Littleton, at the Littleton Museum. And I believe this is yours, Jim.
Yes, I am requesting a $3,000 allocation from our council budget to fund the expenses for the National League of Cities Board of Directors meeting that will occur at the Littleton Museum July 9 to the 11th. We are planning barbecued catered lunch and some entertainment, which is going to be dance lessons and that sort of thing, and a tent rental, because middle of July could be a little bit on the warm side. The estimated cost provided by Tim Nins for these things was a little less than $3,000, but that was just an estimate of how many people would be attending the luncheon. And there is a per-person cost on doing the barbecue lunch. So I asked for a little more than his estimate, simply because if we need it, I wanted to have it. If we don't spend it, it comes back to the fund anyway. The League of Cities Board meets in Denver because Kathy Novak, the mayor of North Glen, is the president of the National League this year. And we start on Thursday, July 9th, and end at noon on Saturday, the 11th. And when the staff from Washington came out and toured the museum, they thought it would be a wonderful venue for showing Easterners and Southerners what it was like in the Wild Wild West. So they were very, very excited about hosting the closing event at the museum. So I am requesting $3,000 to cover our expenses for that event.
Council, this would have to come from contingency, I think, would it? Or are you suggesting, is there another?
I don't know whether it come from that or from council's budget.
A budget person?
My guess is it would depend on how much you spend on through the year, but I don't know, maybe Kelly can speak to that.
Good evening. If you want it taken out of your budget, we'll take it out of your budget, or I will, since I do your budget. It can probably come out of your travel and training account. There's probably other accounts that we could free up the money from. And also, I don't know about the tent. I hadn't heard about this prior to now, but we just ordered a new tent because the other tent got destroyed last 4th of July. So we have a big tent on order. You budgeted for that last year, so we have a tent.
You might check with Tim to see if it's large enough to cover 60 people for a sit-down dinner.
It is. It has an acronym. It's the BAT.
Don't ask.
I better not.
We're still in children's programming time.
Bees?
Don't ask.
Well, Jim, are you okay if we bring this back as a motion to do a contingency transfer? Because that can be done by simple motion, can it not?
It's not possible to do it tonight?
Do we have any publication requirements for motions for contingency transfer? Okay, then I guess it can be done tonight. You want to make that as a motion now?
Yes, I would move that we move $3,000 from
General fund contingency
into special account for hosting the National League of Cities Board of Directors meeting.
Okay, it's been moved to move $3,000 from the general fund contingency into a special line item in the museum for the National League of City for Saturday. Is a second? I'll second that. Discussion. I think, Jim, what position are you on the board for National League of Cities?
I'm a member of the Board of Directors for the National League.
I think.
Sorry. Council, I need to apologize. The charter does require that for contingency transfer of an unencumbered appropriation, it must be done by resolution passed by 5 affirmative votes. So if you want to take it out of travel and training, you can do it tonight. But if you want to take it out of general fund contingency, I think it needs to come back by a resolution.
I just soon take it out of travel and training. We're a little bit under time crunch of trying to get funding established for all the activities that we're trying to do here for the board in July.
Okay, seeing how the motion is improper because we can't do it by a simple motion and resolution, I'll rule your motion out of order.
Then I'll move that we move $3,000 from the council's travel and training budget to cover the NLC Board of Directors expenses.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to move $3,000 from the council travel and training to cover the expenses for the National League of Cities to come to the museum. Discussion.
Well, if we travel from here by way of the cart over to there, then we'd have travel for sure covered, right?
Yes.
Anyway, teasing.
Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Thank you very much.
Sure. That brings us to the Liquor Licensing Authority request to approve to not televise on August. Is this yours, Wendy? Yes, sir. Okay.
At the August 12th Liquor Authority meeting, there is a conflict in the council chambers with the Carousel of Music, which happens every year, and this Liquor Authority meeting always moves over to the courthouse. But before this year, it was never an issue because we didn't televise. And so Rochelle worked, that deputy city clerk who goes to these meetings, asked me to request that we ask council's permission to not televise that meeting because we don't really have access. And this room for the Carousel of Music and that room are also being used that night. And changing the meeting is very complicated because that week is Western Welcome Week, and then we have a meeting on the Tuesday, and so we just wanted to request way ahead of time that we not televise that meeting, if that would be okay with council.
Questions?
But it will be raining, won't it?
Oh, we hope
I
not.
hope it's not going to rain.
We hope not. It was bad enough 2 years ago. Somebody want to make a motion?
Move for approval.
Okay, it's been moved that we not televise the Liquor License Authority meeting for August 2009. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Council ready to vote?
Vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay, that brings us to item 9C, which is a discussion of South Platte River issues.
Yes, Council. Hopefully you got a memo from me, and this is an item, it's a discussion item I wanted to bring to your attention. It has to do with a couple of applications pending with the Colorado Water Quality Control Division. As I pointed out, both these are being submitted by the Centennial Water and Sanitation District, and then there's a second application being submitted by the Littleton Inglewood plant, which of course we're part of. But these have to do with the reclassification of segments of the river running from south of Chatfield Dam. Segment 6C runs from Chatfield to Bowles Avenue, and then what's called segment 14 runs from Bowles Avenue through Metro Denver and then out north to what's called the Burlington Gate diversion point, which is in Adams County, quite a bit north into the agricultural area up there. These have to do with temperature modifications and the classifications of the fisheries. I gave you a fairly detailed memo, and I'd be happy to answer questions. Basically, they would change the Water Quality Control Commission would blend 6C with segment 14. The segment 6C, which runs from Chatfield to Bowles, which is currently a cold water fishery, would become a warm water tier 1 fishery. As I indicated, Bill Miller with Miller Ecological, who is a fishery expert in Fort Collins, who's worked with us for maybe 15 or 20 years in terms of fish habitat in the river, has examined all the data submitted. It's his professional opinion that these classifications will not have any discernible impact on the quality of the fishery. But I wanted to make you aware of this. The deadline coming up is for the what are called pre-hearing statements. That is April 28th. The actual hearings themselves are not until sometime in June. But I wanted to let you know that this action was pending and that we have had Mr. Miller and our water firm, Fisher Brown in Fort Collins, who represented us from 1985 to 1990 when we went through the Colorado Water Court and got our in-stream. We were only the second municipality in the state of Colorado to get a water right for an in-stream flow for recreational purposes, and we used a lot of Mr. Miller's data to do that. In conclusion, if for some reason the council wanted the city to appear, we would still have time to do that. I have to say to you very candidly, I think it would be more to make a political statement or maybe some sort of symbolic statement. Neither Mr. Miller nor Dan Brown believe there's any substantial scientific or legal reason to oppose these classifications. So, but sometimes I know the council makes decisions based on other factors.
Well, Jim, if I read this correctly, the proposed changes in the Water Quality Control Division both are suggesting this change.
Yes, sir. Thank you for pointing that out. The commission staff is also supporting it. There is a slight technical difference.
Looks like they're going for a specific tier, and the proposal is for a different tier with some exclusions or specific categories.
Thank you. That's very important to get on the record. I appreciate you. Yes. And it sort of gets down to some scientific methods. If you distilled it down, there's about a 1.2 degree Celsius degree difference in a certain, because they have winter temperatures and summer temperatures. And so I asked Mr. Miller, if you were trying to just describe it for a layperson, what's the difference? And he said biologically there really wasn't any difference, but it has to do with how they collect the data, and that it's a pretty technical difference. I think on the larger question that would be of interest to this council and our citizens is that the Water Quality Control Division staff is also supporting this modification, just a slight variation of the designation.
Okay. Any other questions?
It seemed surprising to me that changing from a cold stream tier 1 to a warm stream tier 2, that there was no discernible differences between any of the aquatic life or plant life in those two. If that's the case, why do we have all these various divisions up and down the river of all of these tiers?
Well, I think that's one of the, I questioned Mr. Miller particularly on that, and he's gone back and looked at years and years and years of data. The data show that, the Class 1 cold water fishery, that stretch has never actually met that standard. So I think it's been, over time, there's just been more available data. I think as the Water Quality Control Division looks at it more closely and the sampling techniques become more sophisticated, some of these designations will probably be modified and changed to fit more reality.
Reality.
Right.
Okay.
And as the cost becomes higher of meeting whatever the designation is, and they probably look at whether that's rational or not.
Right. And then it also motivates just more data collection and a lot more analytical work.
Okay, so you need no action from us
I just
unless
needed
we
to,
choose.
if you wanted to move forward, if you wanted me to approach our legal and biological team, I needed to know that. Mainly it's an FYI. And if you're comfortable with my recommendation and with the recommendation of our technical team, I don't need any action from you.
I'm fine with this. Anybody have any problems?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Certainly. That brings us to item 9D, which was added on by myself, which is a discussion of the appraisal of the Mineral Avenue building. In order to do that, we probably need to make a decision to release the Mineral Avenue building appraisal, because I think at least the city attorney is operating under the premise that since that was requested in an executive session, that is then executive session material. So I will make a motion that we release the appraisal for the Mineral Avenue building.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to release to the public the appraisal for the Mineral Avenue
Have
building.
discussion?
Sure.
I've got a couple questions for Suzanne. Since we are in some level of negotiations with the building owner, do you see any legal concerns or any negotiation concerns by doing this?
Well, it's hard to tell because I don't know where the negotiation is going to go. I think the reason that these materials are generally protected and can be held in executive session is because these negotiations can head in directions where you don't want to give up your negotiation strategy. You might be dealing with situations where there's multiple bidders. You maybe don't want to give up your need for the property or show your hand too soon. So there's a lot of reasons that these kinds of negotiations are protected. This one has been a little bit different because a lot of it's been done out in the open, so my concerns aren't as great. I don't think there's another bidder that I'm aware of right now, and so it doesn't look like we're trying to protect against that. But in general, there's a reason that we don't do property negotiations out in public. I don't think it sets a precedent where you have to do future ones. It's just that it's not typically done. You all need to decide based on where you know the discussion's going if you think that there's going to be some risk in that you may not get the price you want, or it may put you in a worse position when you go forward.
Doug, you're making the motion. Is there a specific reason why you...
Well, the price that came back on the appraisal is so high that it makes the project undoable on the basis of the guidelines that the council established in the workshop. Continuing discussions or negotiations at this point in executive session, I think, would be improper because we are at a policy issue of what we are going to do about the police building, how much we're willing to allocate, and things like this. I don't believe that that the council has given a direction to do further negotiations on the building. And I think we're at the point where we need to have a public discussion on what direction we're going to go on this project, which is basically impossible without talking about what the appraised price is. Further discussion? Council ready to vote? The motion once again is...
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Trying to assess what Suzanne said, and I think what Debbie was concerned about, that maybe the motion would be not to release the appraised value that we received somewhat in confidence, but instead, just because we know what it is now, and I agree with you, we don't have the money set aside to go forward with purchasing this building anywhere close to the appraised value and move the police department within our allocated budget. That maybe the thing to do would be to just not go forward with the consideration of the building as opposed to releasing what the appraised value is.
Well, if we don't go forward with the building, then does it matter whether the appraised value gets released or not? If we aren't...
It may not to us, but it may to the building owner.
Well, I'm a bit confused, too, because getting an appraised value does not give us, I mean, that's an appraised value. That doesn't mean that is what, if we were going to go back into negotiations with the owner, that's what we would offer the owner. We wanted an appraised value to make sure that kind of a baseline at least, so that we could get an idea of what the market of that building was. So I don't think that by having this appraised value takes this off the table. The other comment you made about the budget, we have $11 million in a water fund, and I think that it's still sitting there, and there's a issue of solving this police space needs. We have no idea any additional cost on the mineral building. We also have no idea what we could buy the building for. We haven't gone back with another offer to the owner. So I don't think we know whether we can afford that building or not. So I don't think that taking it off the table for these reasons, I don't think that's appropriate.
Well, we know that we have a motion that was passed unanimously by council to spend between $3 to $6 million on the police issue. I'll say that again, it was passed 7-0. We know that the appraised value is less than the counteroffer that was made, and with the appraised value, we cannot possibly do this project no matter what the costs are for moving in. It's entirely unlikely that we could do this project no matter how much he lowered the price, because at the original price that we offered, which I think is public knowledge at the 3.2, and the estimate that we had, we were right at the threshold of not being able to do the project. So to continue to grind through this on the hopes that something will come back or spontaneously happen different than information that we keep getting presented to us, but is continually presented to us in secret at executive session, I think is a disservice to the citizens and to ourselves.
Well, I don't have a problem making this public, but I have a problem with your intention to kill the deal because of this. I don't think that that's appropriate, and I think...
But that's not this motion. This motion is to release...
You stated clearly that was part of your intent.
Well, you have to argue against the motion after it's made. The motion that we have in front of us right now is to release the appraisal. Is there further discussion on that motion? Council, ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilman Trujillo voting no. The motion's approved.
Okay. Now, what we have in front of us is an appraisal that we did on the building that came back at $5,100,000.
118,000.
Pardon?
I said 118,000.
Change. We have a motion passed by the council unanimously to spend between $3 to $6 million on this building. We have an estimate of $2 to $2.5 million to move a portion of the police department into the Mineral Avenue building. If the seller was willing to sell it for this appraised value, which is lower than what the counteroffer was, then we would have to move the police department in for $900,000, which I think everybody realizes is not possible. So the question is, do we want to continue down this path? Because the more time that we spend on this path, which is pretty evident that it's not going to fit within our budget and it's not going to fit within the direction that the council has previously voted on, takes time away from the other alternative that is possible. So I will now make the motion that you were arguing against previously, and that is that we remove the Mineral Avenue building from consideration.
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to remove the Mineral Avenue building from consideration. Discussion.
I would like to say that we have about $11 million in there. I understand that when we had our study session last January that we were looking at $6 million, and that's for a 17,000-foot facility for police investigations and evidence holding, I believe, a few other little things. But I've looked at that building several times, and it just occurs to me that for the price, even if we were to go $4.5 million, we would be getting a building that is going to take care of our needs for a long, long time, especially now that the standards for DNA have come out and you have to hold everything in for approximately the entire life of a person being in prison, especially if it's a homicide. If it was in a car, you got to save that car. If it was in the bed, you got to save the bed. So we're going to be needing in the near future a lot of space. And I was just thinking about this the other day when somebody was picked up on a Ponzi scheme, and they had these thousands and thousands of reams of paper that they have to put away for this person. And it's just like having to use another garage for all of this material. But my real concern here is the fact that this particular fund was put in, and had it been cut off when in fact the Two Forks Dam dissipated, we wouldn't be looking at this. This is kind of just a ball of money that's thrown out in front of us. I think that we could still purchase that facility. We've got $3 million that we wanted to pay off with some debt that we told the public we would do, and that's a good idea. But still in between there, there's a $3 million or so that's still sitting there. And I don't want it to disappear into general account. Anything to help the budget that might be shortfall. This is similar to what the state of Colorado was trying to do with the $500,000 they were trying to rob Peter to pay Paul. Now, if this goes on the same way it does, who are they going to rob next year? This money was not allocated for take care of the general fund. And I think that we could shift it over and use it for this purpose. And we've been talking to the public about providing a big enough space that would accommodate all of the things that we need. And my feeling is that we could do it.
Further discussion, Jim?
At our workshop in January, we had a very, very lengthy discussion about the water fund and what to do with it. And I believe our decision was to try to pay off part of the debt that we could pay off, which is a little over $3 million out of the water fund. And that will have some long-term benefits to the people of Littleton. We also agreed to spend up to $6 million to try to resolve the space needs for the police department. And I guess I'm still at the point where that's still my bottom line. The excess money that Joe made reference to, between $6 million plus a little over $3 million, would give us around $2 million left. And frankly, in today's economy, I think we need to have a rainy day fund set aside in case we have to have this for some purposes that we would mutually agree upon in the future. I am not willing to go much above $6 million, maybe $100,000, but that would be about the extent of it, for police services building. I think that if we can't build it for that, we'll have to rein in what it is we want to have done. But we know with the appraisal coming in at 5.1 and some estimated cost of moving the police department, even partially removing it, or partially moving it to a new building, will certainly exceed the remaining $900,000 million that are left. Therefore, I think that taking this building out of consideration will send us down the path that we can then make some decisions about trying to solve the space needs for the police department. And I'd like to see us move in that direction. And we can't do it with the mineral building, in my opinion.
Further discussion? Okay. Tom?
Oops. Go ahead, Tom.
Go ahead.
I wasn't sure how I was going to be dealing with this, but I wrote out my thoughts depending on two different sets of thoughts, and these are the ones that I feel comfortable with at this point. I believe Council has gathered enough information to determine if the mineral building option falls within the spending limits that Council unanimously established at its workshop in January. I therefore support the motion to drop the mineral building option from Council's consideration. There are several reasons, but these are the main ones. First, given the current economy of the nation, the state and metro area, as well as Littleton, I believe Council needs to be more careful stewards than ever of the taxpayers' money. Total city revenue at the end of March was about 8% below the same point last year, and the city manager has told Council he believes creating the budget for 2010 and 2011 will be even more challenging than for 2009. I believe that's right, Jim, that you said that to us.
That's my opinion today, yes, ma'am.
Yes. Second, for more than a year, Council and city staff have been exploring options to address the needs of the police department that Police Chief Coogan identified at the 2008 Council workshop. Council considered several new building proposals nearly a year ago, narrowed the options, and asked for more refined proposals, and then at its January 2009 workshop considered those proposals along with two existing building proposals. Council eliminated all but two of the options, the mineral building and an expansion on the Littleton Center campus. Regarding the latter, Council voted 5-2 to direct staff to explore an expansion on the Littleton City Center campus with approximately 14,000 square feet for evidence storage and a crime lab, including additional parking space of the current large lot, and add square footage for an EOC, all contingent upon the outcome of the offer of $3.2 million for the Mineral Avenue property. Third, at the Council workshop on January 30th, 2009, Council also voted unanimously, as several people have said, not to exceed spending $3 to $6 million to address the police facilities needs from the water fund. Fourth, it is now clear, at least to me, that the mineral building option will significantly exceed the limit unanimously established by the Council in January. Based on all the information that I have received, I estimate the cost very conservatively at $8.3 million. My estimate includes the cost of purchasing the building, making needed repairs to the building and the parking lot, making the building more energy efficient, moving the police department, and building holding cells. My estimate does not include the cost of repairing the road into the site, nor does it include several other things that we've been told will need to be attended to much sooner rather than later. And so I am basing this on all of that, plus what I feel is an economy to be concerned about and being very careful stewards of what might otherwise be thought of as a windfall.
Further discussion? Tom?
Yeah, I think council and staff has been very fair on looking at the Mineral Street building. I think it's time we get going on the police building. We've been talking about it for as long as I can remember now, and I'd like to get started on the building attached to this one. And I'd like to do it with this city council because we know it's going to change in 6 months. So I will support the amendment, or the motion.
Yeah, I have a comment.
Sure.
Well, it's obviously don't have the support to keep this moving. I guess my comment would be that I've never seen an issue get as vehement a reaction by certain council members as this one has, and I find that to be very unfortunate. This option was always intended to be an option. It was intended to be something that was going to provide solutions to problems that we had, and also to look a little further than tomorrow and look a little further than the next 3, 4, or 5 years. I think a 14,000 square foot on the back end of this building is short-sighted, and I don't think that spending $6 million on a short-sighted option is fiduciarily responsible to the citizens. That's my opinion. I always said about the mineral building, if it didn't prove out that we could afford it and that it was financially a good move, then I couldn't support it either. But I haven't seen the numbers that prove that it continues to be a possibility. We have an appraisal, but we don't have a final offer from the owner. We haven't gone back into negotiations. We made one offer, and we're walking. We haven't had any due diligence done on a professional level in there. People are pulling numbers out of their heads. They've got this number, that number, this number, that number, and nothing. I haven't seen anything on paper that breaks it down into a format that I think we can make a real decision on. And I, for one, am very, very disappointed that we never gave what I feel it to be a fair chance. It came out of the chutes with opposition, and it lost steam as it went along. And I think, quite honestly, that it's very disappointing that this is the final decision, and I frankly am incredibly disappointed in a number of my council members for their short-sightedness and their lack of full purging out of an option that they agreed 7-0 to pursue.
Further discussion? Council ready to vote? Oh, John, sorry.
Yeah, I have not changed my mind over the last several months. I think the worst thing in the world would be to pursue this building and get to a point where we end up buying it and then can't afford to finish it or to move people into it. And I think that's if we pursued this, I think that would be a very high probability of the outcome. We'd have a building and couldn't afford to operate it or to even fix it up. Times are tough, and in looking at the numbers, as excuse me, as Peggy touched on, there's no sign that this economy is going to turn around in the third quarter, as has been suggested by a few people. And that money we have sitting there could be our salvation over the next few years. Don't forget, there is a Tabor fund balance we must maintain, reserve balance, and we can't go below that. So I think it's going to be very important when the city manager brings the budget forward to next year to have the costs of what we can spend on a police space needs. And I think if staff can concentrate on one alternative, then I think they can come up with some good hard numbers, and we can look at those when we look at the budget this coming fall. So I will support the motion.
Any other discussion?
I'd like to add more to what John said about the cost of operating the building. It was built at a time when energy was very cheap, and we'd have to do some significant things to try to conserve energy. But even with that, the building is much, much larger than this building. I'm assuming if we got it as efficient as we're trying to get this one, we'd be doubling our operating costs, and that's an ongoing issue. I did go to the District 4 meeting Saturday. I've been through the building once on a guided tour and twice unguided. Saturday, I did notice a major leak in tile at one place, and I showed it to Mr. Woods and another person who was there. I saw another one, but we didn't have time to go back for me to try to find where I'd seen that one. So the roof, just as one example, is certainly something that I think would be in need of an immediate fix. Information that we received from the city codes people, and people went with him, did make notice of problems that would occur with the windows when they begin to heat and cool the building. The seals are going to get compromised in the windows, and those too then will have to be addressed. And I got quite a few windows counted on Saturday, but not all of them, I know. But all of those are major expense, particularly if we want to make sure they're energy efficient. So as much as I might, in one sense, like to buy that building for many of the reasons that have been shared in various citizen meetings, I cannot see on behalf of citizens that this is the right thing to do in this economy.
Okay, Council, ready to vote? The motion is to remove the Mineral Avenue building as an option.
The vote is 5 in favor, with Councilwoman Brinkman and Councilman Trujillo voting no. The motion is approved.
Okay. That takes us to reports. Mr. City Manager.
Council, just 2 quick calendar items, just to remind you of the open house tomorrow afternoon from 4 to 5 p.m. down at the wastewater treatment plant. Again, if you have an opportunity to get down there, it's going to be a very low-key, casual, just sort of celebration. They've got a video. They'll have some people there to take you through the plant, a little tour if you want. As I mentioned before, you've been kept apprised of sort of the big overall picture, but this is a big pat on the back. This plant, during the process, it was completely shut down 26 times. And that whole team down there that had to come in sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning to allow the engineers and everybody to get in there. This was just amazing. Their accident record was just impeccable on this, 4 years. And Charlie, I don't think they had, how many accidents? Three minor accidents in 4 years. So technically it was just a wonderful job by the people who work down there. So if you have a chance to come by, they'd sure like to see you down there. So 4 to 5 o'clock on that. And secondly, to remind you that we do have a breakfast scheduled with our fire partners, Metro Districts from Highlands Ranch and the Fire District Board, Thursday morning, 7:30, next door in the community room. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Would you comment just real briefly about what we did with the American Society on Aging membership? Or did you forget?
I saw an email. Why don't you comment? I think we bought a single membership, if I remember.
Yes, instead of a threefer, we bought one, because somebody on BAC was watching that night on TV and emailed me and said we didn't have to get the institutional rate. We could get a one-person rate for $185. So that saved us, not huge, but every little bit helps, $240.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. City Attorney.
I don't have anything. Thanks.
Councilwoman Cole.
Oops. Let me read a couple things. Several people asked me how it is the city goes about closing streets and letting film crews come in and do all those exciting things. And so I sent message to a couple folks on city staff, and let me see if I can just read part of this quickly. This was processed as any other request for a street closure. Charlie Blaston. Charlie's staff does this on a fairly routine basis. Some examples that come to mind are the closing of Elati Street for 2 days for the Soapbox Derby, the Platte River Half Marathon a couple weeks ago, neighborhood block parties, et cetera, et cetera. So if anybody's watching and don't know that one block in Littleton is going to be used, was supposed to have been used early this week, but they didn't do it. It'll be a little bit later in the month or next month maybe, for filming that movie Serpent Rising that some of you may have read about last week in the Denver paper where they're filming. So that was, I wanted to give that information as requested. And then I want to congratulate, if I find my piece of paper, probably can't find it, here it is, congratulate the Finance Department because they just received an announcement that they've won for the second year in a row. They've received the Government Finance Offers Association Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. And that's really a high achievement to do that. Because it's a user-friendly, communicative, high-quality document. So they deserve a lot of praise for that. And then, one more thing. So, Suzanne, if you help me if I mess this up. But I had been exploring the possibility of having an ordinance against intentional feeding of predators. Wildlife predators, not human. And we determined we probably could not enforce such a law. So, but there is a Division of Wildlife Regulation against feeding such predators. And it's my understanding we're going to have information about this in the Littleton report and on the city website. Is that right, Suzanne, what we agreed to last week? Kelly didn't hear this yet. She's been too busy. But, there'll be some information about it. That way, if you see somebody, intentionally feeding the coyotes and foxes in their yard or whatever, you can call our animal control person, and that person can go out and talk to the person and caution them. And if they continue to do it, then DOA could be involved in this, as I understand it. Is that right, Suzanne?
Department of Wildlife has a regulation against the feeding of coyotes, raccoons, and foxes, I think, in an area where a discharge of a weapon is prohibited, which it's prohibited under our municipal code, so they fall within our jurisdiction as a prohibition. So if somebody were to notice this kind of intentional feeding, they could either call Department of Wildlife directly, or they can call our animal control department, which will go out and talk to the individual offender and warn them about the DOW regulation. So either way, citizens feel comfortable doing that. We can process those complaints, or they can make them directly. But there is a mechanism out there for such a violation.
And none of this is to discount emotional pain when somebody's cat or puppy or whatever has been consumed or is consumed, but just encourage people, please, not to let their pets that are too small to protect themselves and their children go out without being out there with them.
That could be considered intentional feeding. You leave your little dog out there.
Jim.
I've got a couple of things, and then I will have a lengthy Dr. Cog report at the end of this discussion. But the Colfax Marathon comes up on May the 17th for the runners in the group and in the city.
We're submitting an awesome team also.
Very good. Every year somebody asks me, are we going to submit a team? So I'm glad to know we are.
We're in this year, and they are intimidating.
I'm glad to hear that. The senior discount homestead exemption is going away by changes in the state law, so that'll affect all of the people who are getting the homestead exemption in your taxes, so expect an increase.
Yes, but I need help. I wonder if our museum director could come to the mic. Last night there was a reception on the new display at the museum, and I've forgotten the name of what you call that display.
Good evening, Council. The exhibit is called Difficult Times, Difficult Choices, Why and How Museums Collect After Tragedies.
That was the 10th anniversary of Columbine tragedy, and could you tell us a little bit of the display, how it got involved and built and all that, and how long it took?
As I'm sure everyone remembers who was around during the Columbine tragedy, the Littleton Museum was one of 3 institutions that were chosen or were asked to serve as repositories for a lot of the collection items that were left at Clement Park. We ended up actually taking the largest chunk of the collection. CHS collected a small amount, and the Smithsonian just declined to collect. So we have, I think, about 900 pieces in the collection that are related to the Columbine tragedy, and they are specifically items, a cross-section of items that were left at the park as part of the memorialization. Obviously, since Columbine didn't actually occur in Littleton, we wanted to be kind of careful about how we handled the anniversary. We did want to do something, and we felt that as we were the main collecting institution involved in preserving items from the shooting, that we should have some sort of an acknowledgement of that. And knowing that the memorial in Clement Park was going to be doing a lot of the memorialization type activities, we decided that a story that we could tell would be relatable more to how the museum responded to the tragedy, what our role was as a collecting institution, and in probably a greater sense, how any museum in a community, large or small, would react to a similar tragedy. So while the main exemplar is going to be Columbine, because that's the experience that our museum went through, we also talk about in reference the 9/11 tragedy. The Smithsonian is the primary collector in that incident. The Oklahoma City bombing in about 14 years ago. There is, in fact, a museum specific to that memorial that has done most of the collecting. There are certainly a myriad of tragedies that you could talk about. We have really worked most specifically, I think, in what I would consider to be this most recent generation of tragedies, and really kind of starting with Oklahoma City and moving through the last 15 or so years. We've tried to focus specifically on that and how particularly a local community museum would respond, what the professional standards are involved in that, what our obligations are as museum professionals, but also how it impacts staff and volunteers who, in addition to being museum professionals, are also members of the community and may, in fact, be very deeply impacted by the event itself. So it's an exhibit that I think reaches a little bit outside where you might anticipate you would go on a 10th anniversary of a tragedy of this magnitude, but I think it's a story that is a little different angle to, and one that we felt was appropriate given Littleton's role.
I think you and your staff did a terrific job. How long will that display be up?
It's up through September, so it's a relatively long run. We have it up for about 5 months.
So your directors can see that when they come out there, Jim. But
yes, we talked about that.
Oh, good. That's great, because I hope everybody comes out and sees it. As usual, no charge to go through the museum.
Correct.
And I don't want to hold you up, because I know you got to go milk that cow.
No calves yet, thank you.
Thank you. That's all.
John? Nothing. Debbie?
No report.
Jose?
I would like that young man that's been sitting out there from Troop 114 to introduce himself. That's my old troop back in the 40s. Yes,
Sure.
come on down. You're with the United Methodists.
Correct.
Yes. Are you looking for a badge here?
I'm working on my citizenship and the community merit badge because I am going to turn 18 next Friday. So moved through my Eagle project and got that finished today, and figured I'd come here today and get the last requirement on that merit badge done. My name is Alex Wines, by the way.
Sorry, Alex, what?
Wines, W-E-I-N-S.
So you've got all your badges for your Eagle?
I have this one and Family Life, which will be finished up on Monday.
Very good. Thank you. You should get 2 for sitting through one of these.
I'm perfectly okay with that.
Happy birthday.
And you'll be registering to vote on Friday too, right?
Yeah.
Good. Anything else, Jose?
No, that's it.
Jim, Dr. Cog report.
Yes. At the board meeting this month, we approved RTD's final list of projects under the stimulus funding. It was done in 2 parts because of their delay in getting all the reports to the board. We approved the final schedule with no appeals on the bid dates for the Dr. Cog transportation projects, the ones that Dr. Cog controls. We selected our first choice to the High Performance Transportation Board under the FASTER legislation. We determined to do a study session on May the 6th at 6 p.m. Instead of having our normal Metro Vision Issues Committee meeting that afternoon, we're going to move it to an evening study session. We have a report from Department of Transportation's earmarks for the new transportation funding legislation. Congress is accepting earmarks right now. They haven't even announced what the legislation is going to look like, but they're asking all the states to provide their earmarks. The Advisory Committee on Aging met. We had a report on the allocation of the state and federal funds for senior services in the metro area, metro region. Got an update on the Older Americans Coalition and all their activities. We discussed the ARRA, which is the stimulus funds, to senior services, and a priority for us is in meals over transportation services. We had about $11 million in requests. We only got about $8 million of state and federal funds to distribute. So we made the determination as that meals over transportation is a priority. The Administrative Committee accepted the 2008 audit. We authorized a contract to review RTD's financial plan under the 208 guidelines that we're required to approve for RTD. We negotiated a contract, or will negotiate a contract, for web-based services, data services for the seniors area agency on aging. The Regional Transportation Commission met. We approved the stimulus funding for RTD, authorized the administrative revision of the selected stimulus projects, and waived the tip policy and thresholds so they can be added into the plan administratively. The Metro Vision Issues Committee had a very large attendance for this because we were talking about money and transportation. We discussed the zero tolerance policy and the contingency planning and how to expend the stimulus funds. We received information on the process to select funds for the 4 types of TIP funding, that's Transportation Improvement Program funding, that Dr. Cog controls, and set then the policy thresholds for that. Livable Communities Committee, we're having an accessory dwelling unit workshop. It's either going to be on May 15th or May 21st, and it's something that our Planning Commission and our planning staff would perhaps find great benefit, or any council member, any citizen that would like to go. But it talks about accessory dwelling units, which sometimes is garage apartments, sometimes granny flats. They go by different names. And there's going to be a workshop. They're still trying to confirm the date as of last Friday. We had a report on livable communities on aging in place and how universal design will fit into aging in place. Urban Growth and Boundary and Area Committee met last Friday during the snowstorm, and we had most of our members there, as it turned out. Very lengthy discussion, and the bottom line was we're going to the board in the study session on May the 6th to talk about urban growth boundaries for the metro region. And later this year, we will be opening, once this gets adopted by the board, later this year, we'll open up to all the member cities to expand the urban growth boundaries in the 2035 update plan. A lot of meetings in Dr. Cog this month.
Sure. That brings us to item 13F, which was added on. John, you want to make that motion, please?
Yes, I move that following, at the close of this meeting, we go into executive session as provided under Colorado Revised Statute 246402.4E to develop negotiating position strategy and to instruct negotiators on a paving project.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to recess into an executive session for negotiation strategies. This takes a 5-vote majority.
Vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
And this will be all the council and you and Charlie and Suzanne. And who else should we drag in?
Let's make Bert come.
I think that's fine.
All righty. Let's meet at, can we do 5 after?
Okay.
Okay.